Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 61 of the Titanforge podcast. My name is Dratnos, joined by the boring two as usual, Tettles and Trell, and the special and exciting guest, THDlock.
I'll take that in this situation.
What's up?
Welcome. THDlock, of course, our guest today from the prestigious World First Guild, Complexity-Limit.
Humegalol?
World first.
World First. Today we are going to talk with you all about Covenants, Castle Nathria, miscellaneous Shadowlands stuff. You've been a bit of a vocal critic of some of the Shadowlands systems, with some tweet series perhaps that people may have seen. If they're active on Twitter any given day, there's a good chance, in fact, they'll see one such tweet. So we'll talk all about those sorts of things. We do have some other news from Shadowlands that's come out in the last couple days, notably the Prideful affix and some changes to some other affixes. All kinds of cool M+ stuff that we are not going to talk about too much this week, because we already had THD all slotted up for this episode. So we're going to push all that stuff to next week. So Prideful,
hopefully,
all those changes.
Storming and yeah, hopefully the new fixes will be implemented by then, and we'll actually be able to see what they do.
I think I for one, am really excited about the new affixes, and I've been really happy with all of the affix-related stuff since the volcanic changes and the bursting changes that we learned about earlier in Shadowlands Alpha. So much as there are things to be critical about in Shadowlands, and this episode will largely focus on them, that is some good news, at least, I think, and we'll cover that more next week. But this week we're going to talk more about the imminent dangers, and of course Castle Nathria. Actually, Castle Nathria I describe as mostly positive, though. I think that most of the bosses in there kind of own. I don't know, THG, on a high level, how have you felt about the raid as a whole?
I think there's three really bad bosses. Okay, there's like three bosses. They're irredeemable. There's like two or three that are pretty in the middle, and then there's like the rest, which are all really good. Like I would say, like, Sire, Sludge Fist, Hungry Destroyer, Artificer, both all really good. Lady Enerva was a bit of a letdown on Mythic, but those are all really, really good. Now, Council of Blood, Shriekwing, and what was it? Sunken Salvation.
Okay.
Yeah, they can get rid of those. Yeah, those. So whoever made Sunken Salvation, there's a target cap in the game.
Dude, the Sun when there were like 10 ads that came down on Sun King, I was just, my mind was just exploded. I was like, how am I supposed to deal damage? This is twice as many as I can deal damage to. I don't understand what's going on.
At one point, my nameplates weren't appearing. That's how many.
Oh no,
many
that's not a
targets?
good sign.
There's Unbound Abomination level of targets around you.
Yep.
It was kind of wild. That was such a weird fight as well. I don't know. I liked some of the stuff that was going on in it, but certainly too many ads for.
We know that that raid instance is going to be defined by generals and the final boss. Always. Right. That's how instances always are defined, is whether or not the last two bosses are worth the shit.
Yeah, because if there's a bad boss that's midway through the raid, it doesn't really matter, right? Because it dies in 5 or 10 pulls. If there's a bad boss at the end of a raid, like a Jar or Zakul, that you spend your whole time in the raid on those two bosses, like that's when it starts. That's when I think the whole raid tier gets tainted by one or two bad bosses. Because like Eternal Palace wasn't bad because of Blackwater Behemoth, right? That was a boss that just died in an hour, so it didn't matter really what it was like. It really is all about those last two bosses, and I think that at least Sire to Nathrius looks like it's gonna own.
Oh yeah,
looks so sweet.
Stone Legion Generals though,
yeah,
they reworked the fight. The first iteration of the fight was boring. The second was boring. Time for number 3.
Yeah,
I think there's a way to get around it not being boring. I don't know. They do need to change it a couple times though.
I don't know if Complexity Limit discovered this, but Pop-Tart Corn Dog had a pretty fun strat though, where we were doing these stuns at precisely timed times so that we wouldn't get the knockback from the winds at all. And so you don't have to disclose whether or not Complexity Limit found that out as well, but by doing that, we removed that mechanic from the fight.
Why would you ever get stunned though?
No, we were stunning the ads that blow you back when they get below 30%.
Human racial out of it.
If they are stunned as they cross that 30% health threshold, they just never cast it.
Okay.
So we removed that mechanic.
That is a
from
pop
the fight.
corn dog strategy.
Oh yeah, we assigned, we marked them, and then just I had an asphyxiate on one. We had a kidney shot on one. It was a big move.
You're talking about the stun that removes the bleed. There's a couple other ways to remove that.
Oh
bleed.
yeah, that the alliance stuff. We'll talk all about the alliance stuff as well, because that's been a big thing. You guys have been testing as alliance, and I think there's a solid chance that some guilds are gonna go alliance. I don't know how many, but yeah, that's I mean, Stoneform looks extremely powerful in the raid for the amount of bleeds that are in there. Especially, I mean, Stone Legion Generals I think is the most powerful one to have Stoneform on, but still, there's others as well. There's other bleeds kind of all throughout there. Anyways, those will be the topics of discussion when we get to there. But before we can get to that point in our show, we have the incredible honor of thanking so many wonderful supporters over at our Patreon. By the way, we are considering a rework of how often or how exactly we do this patron name reading thing. So we'll talk more about it in our Discord, in the patron channels there over the next couple weeks. But we're thinking about maybe moving this to once every few episodes doing the readout, or do it some sort of way, because it's getting a little bit longer than we initially anticipated. So we're thinking about cutting,
which is a good thing.
Yeah, it's a good problem to have. Very, very happy about it. Initially, I didn't really think there would be a number of names that I'd be unhappy about reading for $10 a month or whatever. But it is starting to actually get to a nice length. So, anyways, for now though, we will read them all out. And by the way, the Titanforge Podlings Guild that has been formed did their first raid last week, and they got AOTC. So, big congratulations. That's awesome. You can DM Anastasia of US Proudmore for more details. Alongside Anastasia of US Proudmore, our other patrons include Paul of US Proudmore, Riley, Agent of Chaos, codename Foden, Delete Yourself, now proudly representing Obsolescence on Wormrest Accord, Just Gopher, some kid that is enjoying all this content Tettles has been pumping out. Yeah, Tettles has been really blasting those beautifully thumbnailed YouTube videos. King of Skills, Zuko, Jaw, Drunk Swede from Legion of Lemmings, Argent Dawn EU, I Wish I Was Ratnos' Dino Pillow, Chromed, Seraphicus, Trekkie, The Marsh Hare, Regulus, Never Nude, Chewy, Teldrassil Elflings Tortured to Loyally Embrace Sylvanas, or Tettles, Rude Dinosaur, Lufer of US Wormrest Accord, Show Me How You Drive and I'll Show You Who You Are, Mugatu of the Guild Titanforge Podlings, Sen of US Kill Jaden, Dazboot, Better Mage Lead Than Tal, brought to you by Dratnos the Excel Wizard, Brad Ceratops, LF Hardcarry to help Stevenson with his 15 weekly no lever, Necris, Will Ever Blizzard Care About Balance and Spec Identity, Shadow Priest can pump if you chain pull, just give him a chance, Nevuk, Hello Madbo, Eevee Frosty K New Meta, Tettles needs to check his DMs so I control my friend more accurately, and also Gino is not 3900 IO and needs to get good, Take Light of the Protector and Enrage Regen off the GCD. True. Yep. Still true. That one's still true.
Still true. Please do that.
True. Look at THD.
Woebone Xenoverse, Gallic, No Trick, Tettles is a Woofkin, I unscheduled a Tettles Flame, Maticus not of US Proudmore, Anna still needs to get gems on her rogue no matter how many Rex Troy videos say otherwise. Prop Paladin is too strong to stay in the meta for long. Dimeat, the only Windwalker in chat, and when will Blizz give Windwalker a blue feedback post? Sync, don't listen to Dimeat. There are 2 Windwalkers in chat, but I agree on the blue post.
It's Dimat.
Dimat, okay. And Xylek. Thank you all for the support. Yeah, the Windwalker thing, that's the only spec that, or the Monk is the only class that doesn't have a blue feedback post, right? Or a blue reply in their feedback post. Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Druid has like 10 or something. Druid gets all of them.
Yeah, we got some bugs in our class. Some major bugs still.
Yeah, but Druid's not a good class, so.
Wait a second, hold up. Take that back.
Dude, Boomy looks kind of.
You're talking to the Warlock.
Yeah, Warlock looks sweeter, maybe.
Dude, Warlock has 3 fucking specs. I only have 1. Leave me alone.
I have 2 specs.
We don't speak about Demonology.
Demonology's cursed, yeah.
Is Maldraxxus Demonology's best covenant, or
Demonology doesn't have a covenant?
Doesn't have a covenant. Wow.
Yeah, you could just not play a covenant. You'd probably be fine still.
I see.
I think that's their intention.
Okay, that's rough. Yeah, I've been looking at these classes because like the ones that actually have good covenants for multiple of their DPS specs are a lot more flexible for rating than the ones that have like a different bis covenant for each spec, right? It's really rough out there because like Warlock, you have Destro and Af have the same bis covenant.
What's-
So you're
Okay, what's going on with THD's camera?
What is
dude,
it?
yeah, it's like purpling out.
Wait, what?
Oh, on the stream. On the stream.
Yeah, you can see it on
Oh.
stream.
I see it like that too.
It's from Discord, yeah.
It's
THD,
This is
has
actually kind of
corruption.
sweet.
Oh,
Let's
I'm
just keep it that way.
corrupted. Holy shit.
Oh, it fixed.
Oh, okay. Poggers.
THD, you gotta put on more corruption resistance, dude.
Okay. Yeah, I think my cam's a bit busted. Might need a new PC.
So are you excited about Warlock in this raid, THD?
Yeah, I mean, they reworked AF. It's
Yeah.
pretty powerful. I don't. By reworked, I mean they added one button. That's basically
Pretty
all they
good
did.
button though.
It's a pretty powerful
Have they-
button.
Have they fixed Seed of Corruption yet?
What's wrong with it?
It's bad.
Yeah, it's used to put up dots, man. That's its purpose. Okay, use it once.
That seems right.
Yeah.
It's fine.
I guess now they have Malefic Rapture, so it doesn't matter
The
anymore.
problem is that there's a dead talent that buffs Seed of Corruption, right? That's
Yeah, so the
problem.
seeds is just
yeah,
not playable.
That talent will never be used.
In Legion, you could kind of use it, right, and then spam seeds.
Well, in
some
Legion, it was
cases.
like the only like viable talent there.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, in addition to that, you also had Cephas and shit, and you would just
Ugh.
bomb out.
Oh my god, dude. Yeah.
Also, Seed Shard Gen wasn't diminished, so
Well, it was diminished in a weird way. It wasn't diminished by square root formula, right?
yeah.
It was diminished in some fucking strange formula. I don't even remember what it was.
Not like it is now. It's
Yeah, it looks like Warlock is going to be Warlock and like other multi-daughters look like they're going to be consistently strong throughout the entire raid, including Sire Denathrius. To me, like Sire Denathrius has this phase where there's just two targets that are far apart from each other that both are equally important to damage. It's just like, all right, you know.
There's also just a sword.
Yeah, this is the sword, right? That's what I was talking about. Yeah.
Well, the sword also gives damage taken to the boss, so you just hit both. You know, it's free
Mhm.
damage.
Double dam.
Yeah, and then on Mythic, there's 4 horsemen around the room. Yeah,
Ooh. I didn't see that.
so you know, a bit wild.
Oh,
Is it the Four Horsemen from Nax?
Nah, it's the 4 horsemen from like Castle Nathria. There's like a trash mob in there, and you can
Oh,
like
okay.
investigate.
Very cool. Yeah, that fight looks so. That fight, it's got like a Black Hand style like floor crash as well to go from phases.
They actually tried a lot of weird shit. Okay, for this being the first raid instance of an expansion, they have tried a lot of weird shit to make it not seem very bland.
This seems like it will be the coolest first raid they've ever done of an
Yeah,
expansion.
it's a great raid. Then you hit Shriekwing, you're like, wow.
Yeah,
The first boss, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay, the first
you
boss
walk
is
in,
really bad.
You walk in the dungeon, you walk up the stairs. I don't know if there will be any trash before it. There's not much space for trash.
There is.
Okay.
It's like 3 gargoyles or something.
You fight 3 gargoyles, and then you just run into Sheekwing, which in the states that we tested it in, did not seem like a remotely killable boss for like anybody. Like we were bashing our heads against that. Like they need to nerf that thing by a huge amount to make it a reasonable first boss.
Well, not
I got an idea.
only does it need to be nerfed, it's just unfun. Like line of sight mechanics and mechanics that force your melee to get off of the boss are just bad.
Just replace it with Council of Blood. You can dance if you want. You know?
Dude, I actually love we call it the Jurassic Park phase, where you're just the thing is just walking around hunting you, and you're trying to like
And you're
line
line
it.
of sighting
Yeah,
it. It's
I actually
so bad.
I felt like that phase was really fun. It was just a little too punishing for a first boss because it one shots you if you screw it up, and it not just one shots you, it like one shots all
Kills
people
you,
near
right?
you when you screw it up. Which
Well,
like there's no
Venice-
way that can make it right.
You, sir, are not a healer and don't have to deal with people just running out of line of you.
Yeah, maybe they could make some kind of line of sight stuff where it doesn't actually line your healers. I don't know how hard that is for them to code, but like if they
I
could
bet
do
that'd
that,
be kind of
that would,
challenging.
yeah. Because as a tank, actually not lining your healer on that fight, on Mythic in particular, because you get this 10 stacks and you become completely healing immune, and you're also trying to like drop puddles and stand in puddles and manage all kinds of different priorities that make it really hard to stay on line of your healer.
That's the only bad. That's one of the very few like terrible bosses, I will say.
I mean, it's really brutally hard, like unreasonably hard for a first boss for the way that we tested it. Yeah, it was like Kill Jaden on steroids, and Kill Jaden was an end boss in terms of like the amount of forgiving, in terms of how forgiving it was and how much individual responsibility the whole raid has.
I don't think it was harder than Kill Jaden, but
dude, it's
you could probably kill it after a while, but it's definitely not first boss. Okay, like,
at least with Kill Jaden you could see the soaks. With this boss, you can't even see the stuff you have to dodge unless somebody does the lantern properly in Mythic.
Well, I mean, you don't need to see them.
Yeah, you could. I mean, I don't know. I couldn't find a spot in the room that was like consistent for being safe from it though. But maybe there are some.
Just gotta think.
I can't do that geometry.
You can see it bouncing off the walls. You can kind of tell. Just figure it out.
How about melee in this raid? I feel like so many of these fights are pretty hostile to the people that have to get right next to bosses to attack.
Which fight would you say is hostile? Which fight do you think?
I feel like almost all of them are hostile to like the 5th melee plus, and a couple of them are hostile to the first
also
melee.
Bad.
Stone Legion, I feel like the first version that we tested was worse for melee than the second.
I don't think the second version was that bad for melee. I guess like you're talking about like the Wicked Blade or whatever.
The Wicked Blade is definitely a lot. Like if you don't have any melee, it's a lot easier, right?
Yeah.
But if your melee is all good, you just stack on the other side of the boss than where you're sending the Wicked Blades at. Because so Stone Legion General has this mechanic where the Wicked Blade, it targets 2 people and then it throws the blade at one and then it bounces to the other and then it returns to the boss. If it hits anybody along the way, it'll like AoE around them and put a stack of the bleed and be really nasty. And so if you have a lot of people in melee, it can be really sketch because if it hits one of them, everybody's going to get a bleed. And if it's 2 of them, everybody's dead.
I think the worst melee boss is definitely Council if you just leave Niklaus up the entire time.
Dude, Council, 2 of the 3 bosses you could kill first are just complete garbage to kill first. Because, like, Baroness just stands in the shield the whole time, casting, and you can't kill her quickly, and it's really annoying. And the other one's just dancing around. You can't kill him easily. It's like...
What about the portal boss? I feel like that's just brutally bad for melee as well.
Zymox?
Yeah.
I actually kind of liked this Windwalker.
I think Zymox, all that Zymox really needs is like she should portal to you like the Nathria does.
I think you're actually just going to run like 1 Demon Hunter, 1 Warrior, and then like a DK if you need AMZ. I think that's.
Yeah, I don't see too much of a purpose for melee on that boss, but I think an important thing is that they should make it so the boss takes the portal with you if like the tank has it.
Ooh. I would not hate that.
I think the portal should also have an arm time for the person it's dropped on and not just instantly port them to the other side.
I agree with that.
It is really obnoxious that it just ports you immediately.
Well, there's also an ICD on the port. It's like a 5-second ICD or whatever, right?
Yeah. It's a really cool fight though. That's one of those fights that's like conceptually really cool. Like it's cool. It's fun to think about how you're supposed to beat it, not just fun to play.
Yeah. It's one of the most fun bosses in the raid for sure.
There are a lot of bosses, though, that we were talking about earlier that have bleeds of some kind or other. And of course, so the Kyrian, if you're a Kyrian, you can remove 1 bleed per fight, but as a pretty costly thing to do as your Covenant. Most specs looks like they're not too interested in Kyrian besides like Discipline Priests.
Prop Pally, isn't it?
Prop Pally for Mythic Plus, yeah. For Raid, I'm not even sure if you want to be
That's
Kyrian.
true. Yeah. For Raid,
you might just want to be Night Fae to Aura bot your team. I feel like Paladin Night Fae to Aura bot because the Night Fae for Paladin is the Blessing of Seasons.
Isn't Rhett also Kyrian?
I feel like Rhett also can be Night Fae and just the Blessing of Seasons your friends, but I don't know.
Okay, that's
not going to be fun, but I think it might be the best for Paladin.
The thing about Kyrian is right. It also replaces your health pot. So if you use it, you have to health pot, and on top of that, it's once a fight. Yeah, Stoneform is a 2-minute cooldown. You just pop it. Never use your health pot. You can just use a big health pot instead.
You also gain damage from using Stoneform as well.
That's Dark Iron.
That's if you're Dark Iron.
Well, that's Dark Iron Dwarf. Yeah.
You probably just want to play regular Dwarf though for a lot of specs because that strike through.
The crit damage. Yeah.
I don't know. Is crit damage really that good?
I guess probably not early in an expansion. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you'd rather have the Dark Iron Dwarf main stat, right? Isn't that what it is whenever you remove a debuff?
Yeah, but that's like a lot of the power of Dark Iron.
DR, right? So
yeah.
It's not during your cooldowns or anything, so it's not too powerful.
And it's kind of balanced around your moving stuff.
For it is that it has like movement speed indoors.
Just go Mechanome for the cheat death.
That's not a cheat death, dude.
It's like
it's a shaman nature's guardian thing.
It is. I think it's technically a cheat death.
It's not a cheat death, dude. If you take 100% of your health, you die.
Okay, never mind then.
This is actually I tweeted about this. I tweeted a poll of, okay, so you have an ability that says when I drop below X% health, I heal for 20% of my health. What is the most powerful number of X, assuming it's on a 60-second ICD? This one had a wide.
You said the first one.
So, would you rather have something that triggers when you get below 10% health, or 20% health, or 50% health that heals you for 20% of your health?
I would say like 50 to 60.
But then it's not got much life saving potential, right? Because that's just going to trigger all the time. And
I mean, you're gonna
that's at 20%.
I feel like more often than not, if you're going to die below, you don't take much damage below 20% HP. Like very infrequent. It's like the same thing with Treacherous Covenant. I remember I had to go back and look in logs to see how trapped Treacherous Covenant was, because you would take bonus damage whenever you're sub 20% HP. You very infrequently take damage below sub 20%.
Right, but that damage is the most important time, right? Like, if you it would always be better to get your heal when you're lower on health, except for the possibility of getting one shot through it, right? So you want to pick a number that's high enough so you don't get one shot through it very often, but you'd rather have it not trigger at a time when you're not actually in danger.
I'd rather just heal me whenever I'm high health, like straight up. I'd rather just use it off CD.
So you could set it at 80% then.
It's something like that, yeah.
Be happy,
60 and it heals me to full. 70 heals me to full, something like that.
I feel like it's most powerful at 20 as well. I think
yeah, 20 to 30 for me.
I don't think you want to go much lower than 20 because then you're just dying.
I genuinely don't think you take much damage below 20% HP. I think you'd be shocked to see how little damage you take below 20%.
I don't know. It's like Will of the Necropolis for Blood DKs, where it's really valuable. The only point of health that matters on your health bar is that last one. Every other one is irrelevant.
That's true.
Yeah, if you get hit from 100 to 80%, that's going to get healed up passively by every healer's just AoE healing.
Yeah,
but if you drop to 35 or 20% and something went wrong, then you have a chance of dying usually.
But you can get overkilled through the 20%.
Yeah, you can.
It's really easy to get overkilled through the 20%. Like if you're 30% health, you just fucking die.
I don't know. It was divisive.
It's like Warlock.
Yeah.
Okay, fair.
Warlock.
Just Drain Soul.
You drain life, or you have Mortal Coil. You got that now. 20% HP pot every 45 seconds.
Oh fuck, you're right. Does the target have to be CCable for you to get the heal?
No.
Never has been, yeah.
It's on the GCD though, like Exil, so it's basically Exil on a 45-second cooldown.
Wonderful.
It's got 30-yard range though instead of 40, which is weird, but it's fine.
It's like Fear. Fear is also 30, I think, or 25 maybe.
That's like not 40, but it's fine. It's a free health pot on the move,
So there are definitely rumors that some guilds are going to go alliance for this first tier to get access to Stoneform for these bosses.
Some very weird King's Honor tweets.
Yeah,
it depends. Right, there have been a couple changes though.
Yep.
So
maybe you won't need it for Stone Legion, right?
Well, one of the things that I'm pointing towards is the fact that they made the Huntsman Altimore. They made that from a bleed to a shadow damage dot. So,
okay.
You can't remove that. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe the first of many to come. I don't know, right?
Yeah,
I think after watching Stone Legion, maybe they didn't like that there was 20 dwarves in the raid removing a permanent bleed. So hoping they get rid of that one. Maybe that's why we went into testing as dwarf to show them, hey, you see this?
This is stupid.
Hey, you see the mechanic? Yeah, we're not doing that, man. Sorry.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like people are saying that there's always kind of this narrative whenever there's something that an alliance racial would be good for, that Blizzard is trying to just get everybody to pay for a faction transfer and then get us to pay for a faction transfer back again. But I don't know. I don't buy that. I feel like just bleeds are a flavorful thing for a vampire raid.
Yeah.
And so they're gonna put a bunch of them in there and then only realize if there's balance implications when people test them.
I mean, Sludgefist has a bleed, but they nerfed it pretty heavily. So it's better to have it thematically there, but not really
Yeah, there's one on another fight as well where if you screw up, you get a bleed, but it's not.
What is it? Nathria?
Maybe, yeah.
I think he has a bleed in P2 or something.
Which I feel like bleeds if you screw up are fine. Oh, Kelthus I think as well has one.
Sunken Salvation.
Yeah.
Kelthus does have one, but that's a third boss.
Yeah.
Bleeds have always been super interesting in WoW too. Currently, if you play Brewmaster in beta, you don't stagger magic damage anymore, and bleeds are staggered as magic damage, quote unquote. So they just go through your stagger and hit you straight to the face, no matter what you do.
Oh, yeah, because
like a warrior.
They're physical dots. They're physical dots, but they don't get affected by armor. All physical dots are the same. They're all treated as bleeds. So necrotic, for instance, is also 100%. It's a bleed, for all purposes.
Well, so is AOE physical damage. Like Kragmaw is not mitigated by armor.
Tantrum.
Yep.
There's always some interesting in between types of damage like that hit you weird.
Yeah, physical dots are like the most. They're one of the things you have the fewest counterplay against.
So say that Limit and Echo and Pieces and other top 5 guilds went alliance for Castle Nathria. Do you think that would push other guilds to also swap?
I think that there would be some people that would, but I think the realistic thing is we'll go alliance, kill the boss, then shoot right back.
Okay, because everybody else is fucking horde.
Yep.
Yeah, and you want to play with your friends and stuff.
Yeah, you could just be wasting a couple thousand buckaroos, I guess, and blizz bucks. But
did you guys notice the Gyarnos just chugged a juice box?
Dude, I got my chalky milk.
All right, anyways.
Chocolate milk.
So you think that it wouldn't really affect anything beyond just those guilds that believe that it's going to give them a slight advantage?
Yeah, I mean, even if there's been history that's shown that they don't like it whenever racial is kind of either A, trivialized as a fighter, B, is kind of mandatory. Jaina with Troll is a good example of that. Where
That's so stupid.
Where they just made everyone have basically Troll racial instead. So
yeah,
at least with Jaina, you could pick, like, if you were Alliance, you could pick whatever the Alliance corresponding racial was like Night Elf or some shit that turned you into a troll, something like that.
I think there were a couple of classes that couldn't turn into trolls, but that could play trolls.
Yeah.
Because you couldn't play Night Elf, but like Shaman, right? Like you can't be a Night Elf Shaman, but you could be a Troll Shaman.
So that's right, because everything would give them Tauren on that fight or whatever.
Yeah, there's some weird stuff.
I played Orc on King Rossicon so I could get the dwarf for the another bleed on that fight.
Yeah. That was fun, the little mapping of which races map to which. Yeah. I don't know. I agree. I think that if guilds swap for Nathria, it won't be a permanent swap because the whole community is still Horde side. But like, if it were to happen, I mean, I don't know, because like people who want to do Mythic Plus, Night Elf has still got Shadow Meld. Alliance has, I think, objectively the better race trolls, like for both rating and Mythic Plus. So I think if you were like figuring out which faction would be best for racial purposes, I think it's Alliance. Yeah,
but then you run into the problem where you have no one to play with. So
right,
that's a bit of a problem whenever you need to do a key.
Yeah.
For other players. So
that's the thing is it's so there's so much inertia now because there's so many players Horde side that like it would require something like Kill Jaden where Alliance was mandatory and top guilds went and stayed Alliance to kill that fight over and over again for multiple months in a row.
I think it wouldn't even be just top guilds. It would literally have to like go into the World 50 guilds, the World 100 guilds.
Yeah,
like, once those guilds also start. Once those guilds also start having to swap, then you're like, oh shit, I think everybody's going to have to swap. Because I think, like you said, I think there's too much inertia now with everybody being Horde that if you have any desire to raid at even a moderately competitive level, you almost have to be Horde for most regions, OCE being the outlier here. But yeah. And it's like, I don't know. I don't think that there's any world that if everybody swapped to Alliance, I think that just everybody would swap to Alliance. I think it's that broken.
Yep.
Yeah, I think you're right on the top 50 thing. If if a couple of guilds in like the top 20 to 30 range started going Alliance at the same time, I mean, all those guilds do Mythic Plus with each other all the time and watch each other and play together in certain content. Like everyone will just start following quickly, but it would take quite a few to start it off.
It would need to be something big enough that everybody felt like it was mandatory to do it. And then people that were on the fence would be swayed by the fact that everybody was swapping.
It's worth more than your BNet bucks and your sales and shit, right?
Yeah.
They should just get rid of the factions, man.
I don't understand why they didn't just like. I thought it was happening for sure. I thought when that cinematic came out about with like Jaina and Thrall, and they were like talking about how it was going to be different this time. I thought, they're setting the lore crumbs for us to explain the cross faction thing.
Like, you absolutely know why they don't do it. It's because people really care about faction. Yeah, like the factions being at war, and it's like an integral part of the lore of the game. I don't understand it from like a competitive.
I don't know. I mean, like the lore of the game is.
You can still have that though.
The lore of the game has been an uneasy piece for almost every, except for BFA. It's been an uneasy piece.
Let me paint you a picture. You can be Alliance in BGs. You can go mercenary mode. In literal PvP battlegrounds, you can be Alliance.
Okay, that's
in Arena, it's Horde versus Horde. Sometimes it's Alliance versus Alliance. Sometimes. Even in PvP game modes, it doesn't exist. It doesn't make any sense, right? Okay. So, for me, it's really insane.
Like, the easiest way to fix this is just you make the racials mirrored. Like, I don't know why every race needs something that's unique. I think that there could be like Blood Elf and Night Elf share the exact same racial. Troll and human share the exact same racial kind of thing.
That doesn't solve anything though, right? Because then still everybody's going to be Horde, and you can't get a group of your alliance.
Yeah, because Horde just has the advantage of just being
where everybody is
racial, but.
Well, there's no way they fix faction balance anymore. That is long.
That's why you just have a big crossfight. You can't fix it. It's either you make it absurdly OP, and then like that's just like really
flip the problem to the other side as well, because then everybody's going to be alliance.
Or you just allow cross faction play, and then war mode is war mode, right? We have war mode. Mm-hmm. If people want to do war mode, they could do war mode.
Yeah, it's definitely not racial. It's not like a racial problem. It's more of a community problem.
Definitely the fact that you can queue up as a Horde player and fight in Twin Peaks as an Alliance, Wildhammer person in their stronghold. Like, that's got to be more faction immersion breaking than like teaming up to kill Onyxia with the other faction, right? Because like that's actually kind of in lore even.
I feel bad for those who are playing Alliance, like who are just recently starting out the game and they just don't know, like if they have desire to raid at a pretty high level and they don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think that a lot of those people will eventually find the Horde. For me, it's like the people who, like people on Horde side, passively get the opportunity to get exposed to high level play and like brought into it that way. And that's never going to happen if you're Alliance.
Yeah.
Like if you're actively seeking it out, you can figure it out as Alliance and you can swap. But if you're just passively playing the game, you can get brought into high level play as a Horde player and not as an Alliance player.
Well, all PvPers I think this season are Alliance. All PvPers most of this expansion have been
because humans
Alliance.
OP, right, for PvP.
Nelf is also really stupid too.
I mean, the Alliance has the better racials in general.
I think they're also sometimes Mechanum.
Man.
Diaper baby.
Dude, I can't believe BFA added Mechanos and Volpera, man. I was content with the race options in this game, and then they had to add those two. Blah.
The heck, THD.
There it is, man.
All right, let's advance through our show. We got our tip of the week segment here. My tip of the week is you can actually mark stuff unread in Discord. A couple people reached out to me after last week. I claimed you couldn't do this. To justify why I never replied to people was because I said last week that like I would see somebody's message, I'd read it, and then I would clear the notification and forget about it. Not if I didn't reply to it immediately, I never would. But apparently you can right click and mark as unread. So cool Discord functionality. I'm still not going to reply to a lot of those messages though. I still forget. That's still going to happen. Trell, what's your tip of the week?
Ooh, mine has to do with threat this week. Oh, so currently in Shadowlands, it's basically permanently skittish at the moment. I think it's partly a tuning issue, but I would really like to see threat buffed. But you got to be careful as a tank. Like if you're a new player or if you're just learning how to tank or you're swapping into that role, make sure you go into a single target fight and you instantly taunt the boss or whatever mob you're fighting. Like no matter what, if there's one target, you taunt on pull. That way there's no possible way someone just gets meleeed and dies.
Let me introduce you to my friend Protection Paladin. They do not have threat issues currently.
Okay, yeah, Prop Pally is currently double damage of other tanks. That's vastly overtuned. They're going to get nerfed, but every other tank has threat issues, so Pally will too eventually. If you're fighting two targets, what you want to do is you want to taunt one of the targets and then put all of your damage into the other so that people don't rip off you within the first 6 seconds. And then the second taunt will come out 6 seconds in and you can taunt the second target. That's just like the rule of thumb for tanking 1 or 2 targets, but every other amount, you got to use your AoE and pray.
THD, what's your better idea?
Just, in Legion, they made it go from 1,000 to 400 to BFA. Just make it go from 400 to 1,000. Easy revert, Sometimes the revert just fixes the switch right there. I got a couple of reverts for that.
I was thinking just like bumping it by 1.5, so it'd be like 600% or so.
Yeah,
anything but 400% aggro, like it's not enough in most cases. If it's anything slightly undertuned or overtuned with DPS versus tanks, then you're probably going to lose threat even if you play optimally.
Especially the target cap doesn't help.
I do think that DPS should be punished for being idiots and like immediately fell rushing in and eye beaming like first, like as the tank is grouping mobs, right?
Yeah, all right, very cool, Moonkin.
Thanks, Bird.
Okay, or I think that you should be punished for having Starfall rolling while your tank is trying to like group up mobs, but I don't think your tank should have an inability to be able to fucking pick up the mobs off you once the mobs are pulled. You're like, what the hell?
I think if a tank is actively fighting stuff, is like using damage abilities every global, and the DPS isn't just blowing their burst cooldowns before the tank starts hitting stuff, then threat should not be a huge issue. And the fact that it is like it's. I don't know. You can solve it, again, by playing like Paladin and by playing misdirection effects and tricks of the trades and, DPS that are specifically low threat DPS, and you can do those things, but like, why is that necessary?
Yeah, you shouldn't need to worry about that. That's so absurd. Like, a tank playing optimally should be able to keep threat 100% of the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, like it should be...
Like, tricks being mandatory feels a bit...
Like, if you have to kite... If you have to use defensive cooldowns, like defensive GCDs or whatever, and so you can't use offensive GCDs, like under those circumstances, all right, that can be a problem. But like, if you're doing an offensive GCD every global, man, stop. All right, THD, what's your tip of the week?
You better start farming your neck levels. I got a 99 neck, and I'll tell you what, I'm looking at the current neck level stuff going on, and it's better than like heroic raid neck at the moment. So in terms of stats, like I'm looking at my neck, it's
you're going to keep your fucking neck for next expansion. I see.
Yeah. So I got a level 99 neck. It's got 194 secondary plus intellect. So secondaries plus int, because it also has intellect on it. And my 195 neck. So my neck is 153 on the beta. The 195 neck I have in my inventory has 30 less stats. So it's got a little bit more stamina, but I'll tell you what, it's a pretty powerful one. I'll tell you, it probably lasts until Mythic, honestly.
There's no fucking way they let that go through, right?
Well, they've already nerfed it once, so we might have to nerf it again.
All you have to do is like 5,000 world quests. It's no big deal.
The cape is still proccing the dragon buff, by the way.
Well, they said they removed that, right?
I had it still proccing it during testing.
Oh, probably because you had your Heart of Azeroth in, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess I get to keep the cape and the heart. I'll see you guys, dude.
Congratulations on your 2 pieces of gear that you don't have to replace.
My 2-piece set.
Dude, I don't know how I feel about this.
That's cursed. I didn't know that was a thing. Thanks.
BFA set bonus.
They're like, oh yeah, so the cloak requires Heart of Azeroth. Little did they know my Heart of Azeroth is pretty powerful.
All right, yeah, time to get back into those islands. Anybody whose neck isn't level 100 this week, you're behind.
No,
you're behind for the Shadowlands grind.
I'm almost there.
Oh, do you still do weekly islands?
Yes.
Oh,
dude,
there's nothing wrong with you, dude.
Dude, I remember being at the Race to World first, and just THD's just there, like he's there before everybody, and he leaves after everybody, and he's sitting at his computer doing islands. After they got world first, the race was over, right? Everybody else is like going like mini golfing or other weird. Yeah, they're just hanging out. They're watching other guilds progress. And THD is just alone in the like gamer lounge, just blasting islands still.
No, THD wasn't alone. Sang was also there farming mounts.
Yeah, Sang's farming mounts.
I mean, did you not? You obviously weren't in London, but the same thing occurred. Everyone left. Me and Sang were still at the Sphere, and I was farming pearls. Sang was farming mounts. So honestly, it couldn't be any more different.
True gamers right there.
Sounds about right. Everybody's out there watching Grobnak in the lounge.
Oh yeah, dude. The Grobnak stream on the big screen TV.
I can't wait till next year, dude. Oh my god, it's gonna be a party.
Well, nobody's gonna be able to get together in person. Probably it's gonna be remote, man.
Well, why'd you gotta say that? That ruins the vibe.
I'm so sad, dude.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know.
Our country's dealing with it just excellent. So like...
your state is fantastic, THD. Your state is absolutely the best.
Miami, Florida has got to be the best. Okay, honestly.
Dude, my state has tried to send everyone back to work like 3 times, and it's just been terrible every time.
That's you too, man.
All right, let's move on to Tettles' clip here.
Oh, you remember last week whenever we were talking about Covenant-specific buffs and dungeons being bullshit? Yeah. I'm doubling down. Look at how much damage this gargoyle actually does. There's some logs attached for like the whole run, and then just for the 30 seconds while the gargoyle is up, that thing does just stupid amounts of damage.
I'll switch over to the log of those 30 seconds now. All right, here it is. Loyal Stoneborn out DPSing TTV Tettles. Now that
no. You have to add that to my damage. I was the big
and consider this. Out DPSing TTV Tettles is not a big accomplishment, but almost catching up to the real DPS in the group.
Hold on.
That is pretty impressive.
That's my gargoyle. That damage is appropriated to me. Please add that to my bar.
If you'll notice, Tettles is barely beating the tank. Big accomplishment here.
I noticed something here. Seems you're playing the wrong Covenant.
What do you mean he's playing the Covenant that lets him get the Loyal Stoneborn?
Yeah, you don't understand.
But I see Nightfade performing the best so what are you doing?
Nightfade's best for raid. I think Vinthir is probably going to be better for Mythic Plus. I'm not 100% convinced. Which means I'm going to have to swap at some point.
Oh,
yeah, that's unfortunate.
Yes.
I don't know. Convoke seems really, really good for all these burst damage windows on bosses.
Convoke is very good for burst, and specifically burst single target.
In AoE, it just kind of does some weird stuff, though.
Vinthir is also insane burst damage as well.
Well, it's a good thing they nerfed Adaptive Swarm.
Thank God. The one that was the worst for me that I didn't want to play. Blessed.
Did they nerf that again?
I don't know. I don't think anybody played it except for Resto. But, you win some, you lose some. But yeah, Covenant-specific dungeon buffs, I am here to say that those are not fair.
We didn't even talk about the Plaguefall one last week, right? Because that came out after our show. Was it the Plaguefall one? Or was it the other Necrolord one?
Yeah, the Slimes and Plaguefall give you a 25% haste, I think, for the group.
Oh yeah, 25% haste. And damage done, other effects. 25% damage done reduced. Or damage done reduced.
Like a proc or something.
Yeah.
At this point, I just hope that they balance that shit. I hope that you don't have a gargoyle I hope that you don't have a gargoyle scaling with key level doing 10k DPS or some bullshit.
The thing about these Covenant locked abilities is that they're not going to actually feel good to have, because more than half the time you're going to have them. It's just like that 20% of the time that you happen to not have a Venthyr in your group or a Kyrian in your group is going to feel awful. But like the times when you do have a Venthyr, it's not going to feel like a special Venthyr thing that you get access to the Stoneborn. It's just going to be normal, and then it's going to suck when you don't have it. Because it's like, it's 1 out of 5 people in your group has to be the Covenant. That's going to happen not always, but most of the time.
I think one of the big problems is, right, in Court of Stars, it was kind of an isolated thing where it was really only in Court of Stars that it happened, right? So, like, obviously, if it only happens like 2 or 3 of the dungeons, it's pretty good. But if it happens in every dungeon, it's not unique anymore. It's just, oh yeah, there's a buff here.
Also in Court of Stars, all the things were activated by either a certain class or profession, which is, I think, an easy fix for all these problems in Shadowlands. Just make it activated by a certain profession or a covenant.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that would help as well. I don't know. I still worry that like if you make it like a covenant or a profession, there's still going to be like pug groups that just don't have it, and it's going to be awful. It's like, if it goes from being something you have 80% of the time to something you have like 95% of the time, like it's still not doing anything good. It's just doing the bad thing a smaller amount of the time and an amount of the time that any skilled group, like a coordinated group, can always manage. But like, we're not like, why do we need to try and make this less negative we could just remove it and not have it be negative at all, right? I don't know.
Yeah, I think ultimately the problem is that like you can't reliably play with the same 5 members over and over again.
Yeah. What was that one thing they said one about Keystone deletion? That was a good one.
We want you to bring in more players rather than whatever else the second part of that was.
Right.
That's so unfun. What?
Like,
that was
why would you want to
their
kick one of your
answer.
friends?
It was, if you have 5 King's Rest keys, maybe it's time to go look for somebody who has a better key. Which is like, okay, but their key's going to turn into King's Rest eventually as well, and then we got to lob them. I don't know.
I think if you're ever removing a player to get a new player in your group, and it's not like on their own decision, like they don't want to play anymore or whatever, like if it's like our keys are almost not doable anymore, or this is not fun anymore, I think that you have a major issue.
Yeah, when do we get to bring the key, not the player? Or like bring the covenant, not the player? Like, man.
Bring the key, not the player.
It's so sad. Like it's such a marked paradigm shift from, I don't know.
Would you take a Moonkin with a 30 junkyard or a mage with a 27 KR?
It's a tough one, actually.
Depends on the Moonkin.
Wait a second. Weird champ.
Yeah, I'll do it on THD Moon.
There you go.
Yeah.
Absolute powerhouse.
I don't know. To me, the Covenant system, I just can't get over it. I don't know. I keep trying. I've been trying really hard to.
I don't see the benefits.
To just get over it, but like
I've been talking to other people, and I had to try to figure out what the hell the deal was with the benefits of it. So it's basically, let me try to explain it. It's basically people don't want to feel obligated to have to min-max at that level. Where I know you may not agree with it, but they don't want to feel obligated to have to even do research into their class or to min-max.
The goal is that like we as a community will decide that we don't care if you pick a suboptimal covenant and just invite you always and like not worry about it ourselves. I don't know. That seems so far from like what is actually going to happen. Like it seems so unlikely to me that LFG groups are going to just choose to not care that the little information they've got about these 2 applicants is one chose a covenant 10% better than the other, and so like
it's not even about LFG. It's about letting your friends down.
Okay, yeah.
So right now, as we play the current game right now, you have to do a bunch of research into what corruption is the best, like what's the best talents, what's the best order that you play your class, and like at the end of the day, I think that there is some level that even drips down into heroic and normal rating where there's an expectation of you to be the most optimized, where this is something that I guess would be deemed largely out of your control, even though it kind of is within your control. Like control. I think that that's the problem, is that it's in your control for at one point in time is the issue.
What if they just randomly assigned you a covenant?
I was thinking, what if they assigned you a covenant based on your class?
Dude, what if they just randomly assign you a covenant, and if you want to get a new, if you want to try and be a Night Fae druid, you just have to keep re-rolling druids and leveling to 120 until you get assigned Night Fae, and it could just take you like 10 times. Dude, Blizzard, hire me. Think about the engagement metrics you'd get off of this great system.
Nope.
That's some shit. I gotta find a new game, bro.
Imagine you hold like 12 guys if you don't get your covenant.
You keep missing.
This whole streaming and YouTube thing has been fun and all, but I gotta find a new game, man. I gotta find a real job too. Shit.
To quote a friend of mine, from the creators of "We made a MOBA without an economy system and a zero micro game. We don't add content to Diablo so everyone plays PoE, and we made a hero that broke the meta so bad we had to make a new game."
Yeah. I mean, it seems to me like the Covenant system is the kind of thing that would have maybe worked in vanilla, but like
I would say it'd be fun in vanilla.
The thing is, right? The thing is, what they want with the Covenant system is they want it to be like a subclass. Here's the problem: classes have existed for 15 years. This will exist for 2 years. It's not even it will exist, but no, it will exist for 2 years. We know that.
Well, think about what an expansion where they actually had subclasses would need to do, right? Like each of the subclasses would need to be meaningfully different from each other in a way where it was actually like fun to play two different of the subclasses, right? But like that's not how it is right now.
Spec is a subclass.
If they came out and they launched this as a subclass system, right? If they said, okay, we've got these two different subclasses is the feature of this expansion, and they're the same class except a different set of soulbind trees and a different one different ability, everyone would be like, these aren't different enough. Like there's not enough different gameplay to justify these being things that you can't play both of on the same character. But it's not like that, right? They're they have all the downsides but none of the upsides of subclasses.
Is there a middle ground that you can't swap your covenant, but it will allow you to, like, if you can't freely swap your covenant, is there any middle ground approach that you can take that, or you can think about that will basically be okay?
Got that Image album. I mean, honestly, art team, carry it off.
art team, just have the art be good enough to carry the whole.
Yeah, like just make it so that you can choose between the 4 abilities like a talent roll, and just have your covenant effective visuals of it. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, that would be perfect.
Effective 4 abilities while leveling. I don't understand.
Yeah, so that's one way, right? Is just so that's a common that's my suggestion.
I like that.
Just detach the covenants from the power part. And
the abilities, rather.
Detach
so
from the power.
I don't know if Jarnos can see the Discord DM, but it's basically like a talent tree that you'd select in game, and then right beneath it has the 3 or 4 covenant choice abilities that you can just
put it in Twitch chat.
Yeah, I did.
Have it their 4th yet, but
use
okay.
But if you could like select your covenant main class ability depending on your covenant and your talent tree, I think that'd be sick. I love that image.
That's still annoying for like. Okay, so I guess you would only get like the soul binds and the conduits and stuff that are related to that covenant, though, right?
I mean,
but the soul binds and the conduits are like
that's a smaller deal.
1% a piece or something like that. They're really not that much.
If it was just soul binds, I think I could live with it. Yeah, I mean, I would still be something I would min-max around, but it wouldn't
be slightly agitated, but not as agitated as the covenant abilities, which are only going to be 1%. They're not going to be 1%. I can tell you right now. One of my abilities.
Me and my 15% covenant right now.
You want a good example? Okay, so let me tell you an ability. So the Night Fae ability for Warlocks. Okay, so for Demo and Destro, completely worthless. You will never use that ability. Not even it's not even worth casting it probably. The thing is, if they buff that ability, Affliction can buff that ability by 3,750%, and it's still bad.
Adaptive Swarm. Adaptive Swarm for Druid, which THD was memeing about earlier, is a 15% damage loss over Night Fae.
Yeah. I think for me, the best compromise solution is let us grind the extra covenants. So like you get your one freebie covenant, and then the second covenant is like a medium-sized grind, and then the third covenant is like
the covenant.
A big grind. And then the fourth covenant is like a massive, massive grind.
I think, for what it's worth, I actually do think swapping covenants is a mistake.
Yeah, but there's definitely other ways to do it.
With how conduits and soul binds and like the dungeon specific shit works out, I think that swapping in of itself is not the best solution.
So we kind of have this game already where there's like gear, talents, legendaries. You have like all these things you need to swap. So then if you add it onto that, like a covenant button swap, and then a conduit swap, and a soulbind tree swap. You just have all these different things where like you go from dungeon to dungeon, and right now we have it right. Right now it's like Azerite, corruption, essences, talents. You have so much that you're swapping when you swap from fight to fight. And I always forget one of those. Yeah, you just go into your fight and you just have your stupid other spec shoulders on, and you're like, I'm so dumb.
Every fucking week, I start the first boss of the instance with like either rapid reload or blood of the enemy on. I can never get it fucking right because there's so much shit I have to swap.
So one of the problems with just pulling the ripcord is that that's what would happen, right? We'd just be adding on like way more awkward to swap stuff. So I agree that there are better solutions that would be more elegant than that.
That's why I think that the thing that THD linked makes a lot of sense, because
putting it into the talent tree. Yeah.
It is tied into the talent tree where it's like almost like a war. It almost looks like a war mode like talent tree thing.
I mean, it's just a talent row.
The important thing is, right? Like they could also expand gear sets. I don't know why the gear sets are only gear at this point. Like there could be like a little bit of extras they could add on to gear sets. Like you could. Like, how gear sets, like you could make it so gear sets swap your soulbind when you pick that gears, and you could make it so gear sets do other things when you select a gear set, right? They could expand the gear set system. a lot for expansion based content.
If they remove swappable legendaries in Legion because they don't like you being able to swap gear in Mythic Plus all the time, there's no fucking way that they're going to be okay
well,
with
it's not
that.
within Mythic Plus.
It's not.
Yeah.
It's just like making it so that you can have more stuff swap when you swap gear sets.
Okay.
Like, so it's more like a one-click thing that you set up a long time beforehand. It's a one-click go instead of like, let me swap my gear set. Oh, let me open up the thing on the top right, open up the Soulbind guy, hit activate, make sure I have a tome on. Like, you just put on the tome, swap your gear set.
Yeah, they actually added something like that
Mm-hmm.
pretty late into Diablo 3. It's like a loadout selection type thing.
Yeah.
Where you can just like hard swap every attribute of your character to whatever build you want to do. I think they could replicate that and put it in WoW. I mean, they already kind of replicated Greater Rifts by adding Mythic Plus and Legion.
Yeah,
I mean, there's definitely solutions, right, to fix their problem of like having it swap like 4 things before pull. I can understand that, but you can also make the user interface friendlier in that way to make that not as much of a hassle.
So, question: how do you guys feel about Conduit Acquisition? How do you guys feel about the Legendary Recipe Acquisition?
We don't know too much about Conduit Acquisition, right?
Conduits seem to be guaranteed after the end of each Mythic Plus. Like certain ones at least are guaranteed.
I feel like I've gotten some random ones though. Like
they drop in addition to the loot from M Plus as well. They don't replace your M Plus loot drops, which is nice.
The thing is, we don't know if that's the actual intended system or if that's the old system where you would get a bunch of conduits and they just be in your bags.
Okay.
So it's like they're dropping like it's like a party. They're just dropping all the time. I don't know. So I don't think that's intended.
Legendary recipe stuff. I feel like I actually like the legendary. Yeah. I actually like it.
I like it too,
dude. I feel like Shadowlands legendaries are just perfect so far. Like this is exactly how the legendary system should be designed, and it's somehow they just learned all the right lessons from like Legion legendaries about how the system should work.
Acquisition on Legion legendaries was trash.
You got to do your weekly tour.
Yeah, that's okay. I mean, there's always either it's an MMO, right? You're always there's always got to be something like that, right? Like
you got to do your chores occasionally.
I just don't like that they made Torghast mandatory. I think that makes it worse. I think there's instances where they have made stuff like Torghast that isn't mandatory and it's better because it's not mandatory.
It's like to get one legendary is so free, right? And then you only do more Torghast if you want more legendaries, right?
Never done the Chromie scenario. It's a good example.
Hmm.
Of it, it works almost exactly like Visions, the Chromie scenario, but it's actually fun because it's not mandatory. So you do it once and then you finally fully finish it and you're like, okay, it's good.
Well, that's the deal, is that they want it to be repeatable content. It's like if they made Island Expeditions mandatory.
But I feel like the way Torghast is set up, unlike with Heroic Visions, right? With Heroic Visions, you finish Heroic Visions, you were 5 mask full clearing with all your orbs, and then you still had to keep grinding Visions every week. But with Torghast, I think you're not going to be done with it. Like, I think you're going to have done it and still have more to do in Torghast and still have it be fun. Like, it'll be in that, 3 mask range of Visions where you're, still progressing, but you've done most of it. And you'll have, most of the legendaries you want. And you only need to keep going back into Torghast if you want to get all your legendaries or whatever.
Or different specs or whatever.
Yeah.
I'm okay. I'm really okay with it. I feel like it's a good system.
I think it's going to be okay. Yeah.
I think one of the biggest problems that I said is, let me see if I can find it real quick. Why people hate Covenants. We eventually leveled every artifact and every legendary in Legion. We eventually got Azerite for every spec. We will never get every ability with the way Covenants work. Let us focus on one and have side ones to work for on the side.
Yeah,
yes, please.
That's definitely one of the things that really does worry me about Covenants, is that there's no light at the end of the tunnel, right? You on day 1 you'll have 25% access to Covenants, and on day 400 you'll have 25% of the Covenants.
Yep, it's not good.
Yeah.
THD on the stream is so
still
good.
corrupted, yeah.
My camera corrupted again.
It's just back. You're good. You're good. All right, let's move on to the global cooldown. So
this is the THD daily.
Yeah,
tweet.
This is one of 2 daily tweets from THD. The daily GCD revert tweet. Day 53 was the one we were on yesterday, so presumably day 54 actually is the one that's most recent, or maybe it hasn't happened yet. Maybe that's going to be something that happens soon.
You like to tweet onto that?
If they want choices, why can't we choose Master Loot for our guild? Is the response there?
That's a good one.
I accept that. Yeah, I think master. I don't understand why they removed master loot, but
Dude, I'm on this train where I think just instead of advocating for the return of master loot, we should just advocate for removing personal loot trade restrictions.
Yeah,
just remove those, and
that's something that's good too.
And we're just vibing, right? We get all the benefits of master loot, and there's none of the like ninja looter drawbacks or whatever that people are scared of from master looter.
That's true. Yeah, if they remove the trade restrictions, that would just make way more sense.
That's
you ever had a mage loot a psyche shredder?
Yeah, mages looting psyche shredders. That's a great example of just like nobody's happy. Nobody's happy when that happens.
Mage doesn't even use it. Everyone else just like, wow, that would have been.
And then if the mage forgets to equip it and equip it in both of their trinket slots, they can't trade it the next week either.
Oh yeah, and that also, I mean, at least they did the weapon token thing. I was about to say, like, the weapon token thing.
Oh yeah,
that's gonna be cool.
Like,
yeah,
two-hander and one-hander stuff. That would have been really bad with all the new two-handed and one-handed stuff they allowed for like Death Knights and stuff.
Okay, so we're getting out and into the weeds with Master Leader. What abilities are you looking to be taken off the GCD? Like, why is this the hill you're looking to die on? Because I don't get it.
I don't think it's a hill to die on, man. I just, you ever push a stat amp button and then you sit there for a second and a half and nothing happens while you're pushing a stat amp?
Okay,
there's a reason why they put troll ratio on the GCD in the beta of BFA, then removed it very quickly because it's just a stat amp. Dark Souls a stat amp, right?
Does AF still have ELT?
No, but it has but both specs have a 2-minute cooldown called Dark Soul, 20-second duration. Just a stat amp, 30% crit, 30% haste. That's all it does.
So do you think that like abilities being on the GCD is just a game-wide issue, or because to me it feels like a very like specific situation depending on the ability.
Abilities.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. A good ability is like Pillar of Frost, like that ability, right? Like whenever I played my Frosty K in BFA, I was like, dude, what is going on here? Like I got a 45-second cooldown. All it does is give me like strength or something, and it's just I'm just sitting there.
Right.
It's only giving me strength. Like if the ability only gives stat, shouldn't be on the GCD. I don't think like Icy Veins is a good example. Gives what 30% haste. That's all it does.
Abilities that don't do any damage.
Feels not terrible.
They don't do any damage, and they don't play a cool animation,
or give you like something.
Those ones, yeah, and they don't like give you resources. Like those three. If ability doesn't do one of those three things, it shouldn't be on the GCD.
Celestial Alignment was like that until 8-1.
It's
and honorable mention to the tank stuff where it's like a reactive off GCD normally type ability, like in Rage Regeneration, Frenzy Regen, or Light of the Protector, or Celestial Brew. All those are awful.
Tank shit being on GCD is just bad.
It's actually so scuffed because like you're punished so much for keeping it up and not using it. Like if you think you might need to Frenzy Regen, so you save your GCD available, and then you don't actually need to use it, you're just so far behind.
Oh yeah, and also when threat's this bad, you have to actually choose if you want to press a threat GCD or a keep yourself alive GCD, and that is awful to make that choice.
Yeah, I think that Light of the Protector. I think that those should be the first one. Like if there's a priority list for what needs to be off the GCD, it's like Light of the Protector, Frenzied Regen, Celestial Brew. Like those are the three that I'd be looking at first, and then getting to like the stat amps. I think that what they did with Rune of Power is great, by the way. Like Rune of Power and Touch of the Magi applying charged up. Yeah, just making it so that like it's baked in. You're making it so you pressing your big cooldown pops your small cooldowns automatically, and like nerfing the small cooldowns cooldown to compensate. I think is a good way to solve this.
Divine Shield being on the GCD is actually the. I don't know who came up with that. No other abilities on the GCD, dude.
Okay,
is Ice Block on the GCD or no?
No. You can't get
Netherwalk
locked out.
I think Netherwalk is. I remember Netherwalk.
The thing about Bubble is like
Nether is a talent though, is the problem. Like the issue is that they just uniformly put all of the talents into this should be on the GCD bubble, and they put all of the like base abilities into this should be off the GCD bubble. And it's just like there's some stuff that like Dark Soul or like Netherwalk, I guess.
Okay, so like the thing about the GCD change is exactly what they did with the AoE change. Is they put the change in, didn't think about anything about why the change should be in, but put it in anyway. So like when they put in the AoE cap, they didn't design anything around it. They're just like, here's an AoE cap. All right, they just stuck it in. All right, here's Kale Foss. Like, okay, like yeah, like great. And then the GCD changed the same thing. They just stuck it in. They're like, "Yep, that's good." And then they didn't like bother like check on what was the problem. They're starting to look at this stuff, but it's like 2 years later, man.
I completely agree. Like when they put in the GCD change, they should have made abilities that would require you to hit those GCDs take longer to cast on you, like defensively, or have like a meaningful thing on those GCDs, like THD just said, where it needs to do damage or have some cool animation instead of just stat amp.
Right, because like Stormkeeper, even though it just charges you up or whatever, like literally just the fact that you like put your hand in the air and you're zappy for a bit makes it feel fine. I don't know. It's that simple.
I love innovating people. That shit's all on the GCD.
In the second part of the target cap thing, they should have made dungeons and raids not have more than like 5 or 6 ads that spawn at a time. Like in dungeons, there's literally 2 pulls that I know of for sure that you have to pull 20 targets, and they last quite a while.
The first boss of Plague, or first room in Plaguefall.
Yeah, that's actually a third. Second one is the mini boss at the end of halls, where you just have ads that get in combat with you all around the room. You have to pick them up. And then the last boss of Plaguefall, that trash, all 3 of those packs pull no matter what.
You have to, that's like 10 each pack?
Yeah, there's like literally 25 mobs or something.
Yeah, the AoE cap one is like there's strong evidence in both raid and the dungeons that there's just huge swaths of areas where you just are hugely incentivized to have only classes that aren't capped.
Or like Sanguine Depths has 1,000 yellow mobs, like non-elites, that just like intermittent pepper into your pull, and there's like 5 at a time with like 3 like big HP targets, and you're like, what the hell is this?
All right, look, that dungeon is I think we're gonna see a nice Twitter for that one.
What's
I think Plaguefall is infinitely worse. Okay, I think Sanguine Depths is not great. I think Plaguefall is 1,000 times worse than Sanguine Depths.
I'm not sure yet. Both of them have their issues.
Sanguine Depths' problem is that their mobs are just bad. Plaguefall
is the mushroom trap still there in Plaguefall and like all that crazy stuff?
Oh yeah, the freaking mushrooms are the worst.
Yeah, okay. So I remember the first time they added Plaguefall into like the game, I was like, oh wow, this is a great dungeon. The first like beta, the first alpha build they had it. And then I guess some dev got really mad or something. He just started putting in like some crazy shit. I don't know.
That dungeon has
wild shit going on now.
That dungeon has everything that's like wrong in dungeons in it. It has like bombs that play the dungeon for you. It has just a fuck ton of skippable trash that you would prefer to skip, but they gatekeep you by like random worms that spawn out of the
single tentacles that you have to fight, and then you're in your path.
And then it has just like bosses with really limited uptime, like Ickis and the third boss had just terrible uptime. And then it has the last boss, which the graphic, I haven't done it again this week, but the graphics the last time I saw it were not very consistent with where the fuck those tentacles were going to slam, and it tilted me because I felt really dumb.
I think they finally fixed it, but I think Infectious Rain just wipes your group.
Yeah, Infectious Rain is the problem on that boss now. Everything else just looks pretty good to me.
Great.
I remember I was doing an M0 of Plaguefall. It was like last week, and I think Infectious Rain wiped the entire group. Like we barely killed the boss, like one guy alive with one Infectious Rain cast. We're like, oh nice. So I can't imagine how that scales on M+ right now. I don't know if anyone's.
Oh, it's bad.
Yeah.
We don't do above +10 because of that one ability.
So
at the moment,
Dratnus, do you see the Wowhead article for the AoE target cap?
Yeah, found it.
Dude, take a gander at that.
I'll put that up on the screen.
Squishy and Jada and others put together an article outlining which abilities are target capped and how they scale, and like whether or not there's a hard cap, a soft cap at 20. There's some abilities that scale, like get diminished returns by like square root, meaning that you're gaining more damage per target added, but it's at a lower interval per target added. The fact that there has to be a spreadsheet for how every single ability is going to interact, whether or not there's like soft caps at 20, square root diminishing, whether or not it's a meteor or whatever else, is so silly.
Yes, Death and Decay soft cap 20, Scourge Strike 5 if in Death and Decay, Sacrificial Pact 8, of course, Heart Strike 2, Howling Blast square root, Remorseless Winter soft cap 20. Yes. Very cool. Yes. Dude, I'm gonna be doing my dungeon. I'll just open up the spreadsheet and just do some math about, you know, how much damage I'm gonna be doing on each pull.
And then if they pull over this, you'd be like, no, this is not good for me. Most of my abilities are capped at 5.
The cool thing about Unholy actually is, yeah.
I don't know what you're talking about.
People saw the bursting source cap at 8 and thought that caps up, but that didn't fix it at all. That doesn't cap Unholy. Unholy now just scales linearly past 8 instead of quadratically, but it's still, like, linear scaling still owns compared to everybody else.
Well, yeah, your application of wounds is still infinite or whatever.
And it still scales quadratically to 8, which, like, by the time you're on the 8 quadratic scaling, it's already kind of owning.
You're gonna fucking you're gonna
I know
murder everything
about a linear scaling, you know. Want to check out Warlock, you know?
Okay, yeah, let's go. We'll go take a
look
look at the Warlock.
Look at Warlock with literally no capped fucking abilities. I don't know.
Yes.
Okay, we got one capped ability. All right, let's hear me out.
Oh, Fellstorm, Havoc.
Okay, Havoc. I don't think Havoc should really be there.
Dude, I can't believe Havoc is. I can't believe they target capped Havoc, man. What is this game coming to? SMH my head.
Soul Rot's capped.
I wish I could Chaos Bolt 30 targets, man.
That's an insane ability. That Covenant ability, that's going to be crazy. Soul Rot.
Yeah. My favorite is just the tank ones. Like,
go look at Thunderclap. Go look at Thunderclap.
Go to
5. Revenge and Thunderclap are both 5, and then square root.
Dude,
you know what?
No. Thunderclap was 1.
No. Thunderclap is normal until 5 targets. It's parabolic from 5 targets until 12. It doesn't change with a 13 target, but then it's linear to 20, and then it meteors after 20.
What the hell? Wait, what? There's 3 different levels of scaling on Thunderclap?
Yes, I wish I was lying.
All right, I don't see that on this little chart.
She says in chat that he's updating the sheet soon.
Okay, that is wild, but also somewhat
shit.
reasonable. You know what? As long as it's not hard capped at 5 for tank stuff, if they do square root scaling or whatever for tanks, I'm okay with it. It's just the hard caps, man, for tanks.
The most convoluted shit ever. Yeah. I don't know why they had a problem.
Brewmaster.
So in Mists of Pandaria, they added the soft cap where everything meteors past 20 targets for most classes and most AoE abilities. Mm-hmm. Why did they go back on that? I feel like that was like the right number. 20? Like, why the fuck are you pulling over 20 targets most of the time anyways?
I mean, I think that nerfing stuff, like making stuff Twilight Dev scale, where it's like 5 targets full, 5 targets half, and then it stops hitting stuff, I think this is a completely reasonable way to balance some AoE abilities. It's just like hard capping stuff at 6 or 5 is... Man,
you just fell barrage,
dude. Windwalker, dude. Look at this spec, dude. Look at this spec, Windwalker Monk. Look at what they.
Dude, it's awful.
Dude, is it just 5 in square root? Is that all?
Imagine being either of the Windwalker monks that still play the game, and seeing this, right? Like, man, why, dude?
Dude, both those people were probably so.
Yeah,
mad.
they're got to be both just fuming.
Well, at least they
also
specialize in that type of stuff.
Go to the general tab too. Spinning Crank Kick is also capped for all 3 specs. And yes. I think that one's actually okay. Like, they could leave that cap for Windwalker if they uncap Fist of Fury, but that also means it's capped for Brewmaster and Mistweaver, and Brewmaster has a cap on Jadewind and Spinning Crank Kick now, which means they can't get threat reliably on half the pulls in the dungeons between keg smashes.
It just leads you to ask the question, but why? Like, what is even the purpose of doing this? I understand that they want, like, I guess the reason that is that they want cleave specialists. Is this going to create cleave specialists? I feel like this is just going to make these classes innately worse, right?
Yeah, I mean, it will as long as they keep it like this. They need to literally cap every class ability, or they need to uncap tons of them that are already capped.
The argument is you could make, like, Fist of Fury deal more damage baseline.
Per target? No. Fist of Fury would have to do more damage per target added, up until 5, where it does no more extra damage.
Right, because that's the thing, is if they just made it do more damage on, flat, then it's just it's OP on single target,
exponential damage per target added.
Yeah, they need to make these ability right. If they want it to be like a niche, it needs. You're absolutely right. It would need to do like especially lots of damage on 5, enough to keep it still viable on 8 against a Warlock, which and nobody is viable on an 8. Nobody is
still
capped.
Have it used on single target. Like it still needs to also be usable on single target while doing stupid fucking damage up until the cap.
Because right now, like, Fist of Fury keeps up until 6 with Warlocks and Boomkins. Nobody is beating Boomkins or Warlocks on 5. That's the thing, is the uncapped specs aren't just, like, awful until it's huge AoE or anything. Like, they're good still, and of course they're going to be good still. Of course Blizzard isn't just going to make these specs that don't do damage on 5 targets. Like, they did that with Boomkin and BFA, and it was like a tragedy, and everybody hated playing the spec the whole expansion because of that. Like, they're not just going to balance this by making specs suck until they get past, like, by making the uncapped specs suck until there's a lot of targets. Like, even if that's theoretically a way to balance this, and people kept talking about how that's what they were going to do, like they haven't done that, and they're not going to. It's not like that's an oversight in
they
beta.
need to change. They need to change it a lot. I feel like there is a way to make these classes cleave specialists and these specs cleave specialists, but it does take a lot more work than just target capping a couple of abilities and saying, I identify as a cleave specialist. And you're like,
it's just
no.
It's
I
just
identify
so
as somebody who
bizarre
doesn't do
like,
AoE.
I don't know. Like, if the game is supposed to be more casual friendly as a result of this, like, how many casual players are going to go open up this chart to figure out what spec they're supposed to play in the dungeon? Because, like,
I know.
Like, how often are you just going to be a casual player and you're like, why is my Windwalker suck? I don't understand it. Like, why am I worse than the Warlock? And the answer is my buttons don't hit all the targets. It's like, there's nowhere in the game does it say that. Nowhere in the game is it explaining that to you. The tooltips often don't even have the correct target capped information on them. You're just like,
oh yeah, dude, the rogue abilities don't tell you that they're shit.
Yeah, they don't tell you they're target capped. It's like you're just...
like isn't like application of poisons for assassination now capped as well, or something stupid from
well,
Fan of Knives?
Fan hits 8 targets and it can apply poisons to all 8 that it hits, but so you could move and then hit a different 8 with your next fan, and I think you can poison them all.
Some of the justification I've been seeing for people being like the AoE cap, they're like, I like the AoE cap because that means I could do more damage as a Warlock or a Boomkin. I'm like, okay, that is the worst response I've ever heard.
Yeah.
Right.
I don't even like it. I play fucking Boomkin. Like, what? Like,
I'll tell you, that is a terrible... Okay, so yeah, let me just ruin the game for 80% of players so I can be better. Yeah, that's like Covenants, okay? Look at that.
Yeah, it's pretty scuffed. I'm not huge on the target capping. I think that there is a way to make these classes cleave specialists. I just don't think that this is the correct approach.
On the flip side, if a casual player gets into the game and chooses a spec on accident that it's not target capped, like Warlock or Boomkin, and then they just enter a dungeon and they go into that one pool that has 20 mobs and they die to threat, they're going to be like, well, why didn't my tank save me?
Yeah. Why didn't my tank spinning crane kick those mobs? Oh, right.
He must just be bad, you know?
Very cool.
Yeah, I think
if someone tries to play Warlock that's a new player, their brain will...
But I do think that making those abilities that they target cap like scale, it doesn't even have to be exponentially. It can be like it can be just a better linear scaling whenever they add additional targets and shit like that. But then hard cap it at whatever. I don't know, man. They need to do something to make them actually cleave specialists as opposed to just scuffed uncapped classes.
Right, because it's not like the graph looks different until 5. It's just for some specs it disappears after 5 and for others doesn't.
Yeah, exactly.
It's there's not a legitimate trade-off to be had. It's
because of how the game is designed. Like, so I guess relating this back to Moonkin Star Surge is on single target, Starfall is on 2. Like the way that Moonkin is balanced, it's balanced around single target. Like every class is balanced around single target, and thus for you to want to swap your main spender from Star Surge to Starfall at 2 targets, there has to be some level of balancing at that point to be able to have it to be better damage there, and then it scales linearly whenever you add additional targets at that. That's how all the classes fucking work, except some of them the graph just stops at 5 and the other ones don't. You're like, what the hell?
Because the basic idea is if there are 5 targets and your ability is like uncapped AoE, so they've nerfed it to be no damage, and so you're just still hitting your single target button at 5 targets, like that feels awful. That's BFA Moonkin. That's literally what BFA Moonkins do, is you just hit Star Surge on 5, and like it is not fun if there are 5 targets and you don't press your AoE button. So they're never going to balance these uncapped abilities to be like that. That's not going to happen, because these specs will revolt. Every spec that happens to is going to hate it and complain about it forever. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, I feel like there's a lot of the people that are pro target cap either don't really understand this, or they're just like, I hate the specific specs that are being target capped, and so I'm glad to see it.
Capped.
Right. So they're
like, it doesn't affect me, so it's not a problem.
Right. They're just like, you know what, Havoc DH. Like, I'm glad they're capping Blade Dance, because like Havoc DH was good in BFA, so it should suck in Shadowlands.
People who think that like Havoc DH or Mage deserve to be punished for being good, like that is such a bad argument. Like, you should really want every single class to be as fun and as OP as Havoc Demon Hunter. You shouldn't want Havoc, because they were good for one expansion, to just be in the gutter.
I don't know. I just think back to like Blood DK, right? Think back to how, if you're somebody who has this thought process of like, because the spec was OP before, I just hate it forever and want it to suck forever. Like, they nerfed Blood DK into the ground, and like all of a sudden the spec is not like. Do you still hate Blood Decay? Because like the patch after they nerfed Blood Decay, everybody was like, all right, this is a fun spec. Like, let's make it good again. But like, that's not how it works. If a spec gets nerfed into the ground, there's a good chance it's going to stay that way for years. So we just like we should try and have them all be roughly equal. I don't get why it's such a controversial point, but I think that all the specs, they should try and make them roughly equal. They shouldn't just make the spec that was good in the previous expansion suck in the next one. And particularly, like, man, stuff like Windwalker, the specs that sucked in the previous expansion.
Can they stop just gutting shit into the ground too? Like Hellfire Citadel, Demonology, and like Uldir Sub. In what world does that shit need to be?
Well, Uldir Sub, I don't know, man. Subtlety,
but you have to rework that. You don't just make it unplayably bad.
I don't know.
I killed Brawl Warrior too.
I can tell you what happened though.
Subtlety is a kind of a special offender because like Subtlety did something that no other spec in the game really did with damage funneling. That's like a fundamentally absurd.
Blizzard is very reactive. They are extremely reactive to whenever something is very good. It's very obvious.
Subtlety is like I don't know. I will defend nerfing Subtlety into the ground for the entirety of BFA because an unnerved Subtlety like that. That was not going to be there. There would have been so many cases where that would have been way too hard, in my opinion.
I like people saying except Mage. Yeah, try playing Fire on the beta. See how that gets you.
I don't know, man. I think that over nerfing stuff because it was good, and then people rejoicing because it was been nerfed because they saw them get priority over them in a patch or in an expansion is just, I'm not a fan of that.
Yeah, same. Unfortunately, it's easier to nerf like a couple specs than buff like 15 other specs on comparing like the workload for developers. So I kind of get it, but honestly, like all of us wish they would just buff the bad specs instead.
Here's a graph of Zool 8.0. Damn.
Okay, that was not my point. Wasn't that it was fair? I thought that they should have reworked the fundamentals of how that spec worked, as opposed to just completely making them do less than tank damage.
Did you see these two little spikes here? By the way, these two little spikes. Those are both me. That's both me, by the way.
Oh man!
Each of these two little spikes near the start.
Nice spike of damage, bro.
That's me. Smiley face.
It was me. Smile. Yep.
You might as well open up the Mistweaver chart for 8.3.
Yeah, the Mistweaver chart.
Yeah.
Dude, I mean, Mistweaver deserved
Sloot shit. That Sloot had like Dobbs and other Mistweavers on his stream the other day, and they showed the graph of Mistweavers. They have been at the very bottom every single patch for as long, like it was like 3 expansions. They've been at the very bottom of every single patch.
Well, healer balances. There is something going on over there. There's just healers that do free damage and have DRs, but do the same healing as other healers that don't have free damage or DRs. So there's some. It'll be the same meta. It's still Holy Paladin is king in Raid. So.
Yeah, well, that's how it always goes. Damage reduction cooldowns are always very fair.
Here's that chart with the Mistweavers. For the,
That's so good. We become viable. Fuck, we're too strong.
Look at how bad it fell, dude. It's literally just
okay.
Look at how much lower it is than Resto Shaman, though.
This is so much more of a problem than this is, though, right? Like a spec that is twice as good as another spec. Which, by the way, the axis here doesn't start at 0, right? So, like,
this
is actually that's not half, dude. This is 111 to 91, so it's a small difference here for the.
What's Holy Pally at right now versus Mistweaver at right now?
Yeah, what's up, THD?
Like they started off higher than they ended.
That's
true.
Here, we'll use per second amounts. Like Holy Paladin's 172k. Mistweaver's 141k, so it's like that's definitely a big difference. It is big, and it's like they should buff Mistweaver.
It's not what they were, right?
But like,
it wasn't like
if you have a game where one spec is doing 230k and one spec's doing 143, like that is a huge problem. It's a huge problem if one spec is ahead of 5 other specs in this way. It's not a huge problem if one spec is behind 5 other specs that are pretty close like this. Like
they did slide down the nerfs on that pretty quick.
This
was like 2 weeks.
It was correct to nerf this to be somewhere in the range of the other stuff. And like, yeah, it would have been best to hit it somewhere in the middle. And even if it was still slightly above them, that would have been fine too. But like, this was really, really, really bad. They needed to fix this. I don't know. It's just tough. It's the over nerfing is like, it's rough when it happens. Sometimes it has to happen, but like that's what the times when over nerfing has to happen is when it's in the middle of the patch and there is an urgent need to deploy the fix now, like this for subtlety
and not to
for
get data on
Mistweaver.
it.
You know, you got to fix this, right? Because like this is warping the entire metagame, and like people are making some whack decisions, and people are getting sat, and all kinds of weird stuff. People are one healing boss fights. Like things are going to be bad if you let this persist for another week, right? There's a huge time pressure here. There's not in the alpha. In the alpha and in the beta, you have a year to do this, right? Like you don't just need to nerf all of these specs that aren't AoE capped into the ground, and there's no time pressure. Like you can just make sure that it lands in the middle, right? It doesn't have to be just like it's more important that we act quick than that we act precisely. So I don't know. That's my bit.
All right, I accept that.
All right. I think we covered everything we wanted to cover and quite a bit more of our topics here. Let's move on to taking some questions and answers from the chat before we close out our show for today. First question comes from Lenoxus, who asks, what do we think about Prideful Melding and how do you solve it? So for those who don't know, we'll talk more about this next week. Prideful, the seasonal affix, it's basically Reaping, but a single target version. And like Reaping, you can spawn the ad and then activate your Shadow Meld abilities and then ignore the ad. What do you guys think about this and how do you solve it?
So you should never be able to drop combat with true sight mobs. It's like the first and foremost thing. I also think that the issue comes with the arm time of the Prideful mob. It takes like 10 seconds to arm and like activate after he starts like draining the pride, draining the pride from the adjacent mobs. I think that like removal of the arm time potentially could be a fix. In addition to that, like not being able to actually meld it off. I as a whole don't believe that you should be able to meld off true sight mobs.
I think it should still turn you invisible for the sake of like rogue players out there, but I think it should keep you in combat still.
Yeah,
like,
I mean it's not just true sight. It's not just meld though.
Raid bosses.
Yeah, on
raid bosses
you can stealth and still be in combat.
Yeah, you'll still be in combat. Yeah,
so they have the system available. I think they could just apply the aura.
Well, it's not just melding too. You can also use in the driller in Motherlode, whenever the extractor gets killed, the driller comes out, you can like Infernal Strike and leap away, and then that mob will just never proxy combat with you. Like you can do the exact same shit, I assume. You can also use like Theater of Pain teleport portals to be able to just get far, far away from the Prideful mob, and he just deactivates.
Yeah. Well, that's an actual system with any mob in the game. If you get far enough away and they can't path to you ever, and they don't snap to you, if it's coded like that, then they'll reset eventually.
No. It's you're not in combat with it. It's the arming time. Like you're getting out of range of it, like via the arming time. I think it needs to
100-yard aggro range or something. Yeah,
it needs to global combat you and not be able to be like it needs to global combat you and then probably also be able to be like snapped and shouldn't be able to be dropped by meld.
Yeah, I think
I don't know about snap. The snap thing
I don't think
is
you should snap. Yeah, I don't know. That's a hard one to fix.
You could just like if there's a Prideful mob that's alive for more than 2 minutes, just start putting a stacking debuff on the whole group that makes them like deal no damage to non-Prideful mobs. Bang.
Oh, I don't like that.
If it's alive for more than 2 minutes, that means you're not fighting it. You're not killing it.
Alive for more than 2 minutes. Never mind.
Yeah, if the Prideful mob exists in the dungeon and isn't being fought and nobody's dealing with it, just have it start stacking up a debuff on you that makes it so you have to go and kill it.
Squishy makes a good point in chat. He says the problem with global combat is whenever you release and die, it'll snap to the beginning of the instance.
Yeah, which is a little weird.
Actually, Squishy has a good point. Like, make it appear with the final boss, just like Awakened.
Yeah.
If you skip it.
So if there's any of them that are alive, it ports to the end boss. That would work too. Yeah.
Because that could actually be some meaningful choice in Blizzard's words as well. Because you could choose to fight 2 of them if you have the means, with the final boss. Or you could choose to fight just 1 if you can heal through it.
I feel like there's a lot of creative solutions to this that would work. Yeah.
Yeah. Not healable yet, but people find ways,
Sure.
Don't say meaningful choice. I'm scarred.
Just saying. I said it at the beginning of Awaken. At the end of the season, people will be fighting 2 with every boss, and that was
I think
true.
that you should. I think that you should be forced to play the Prideful mob though, like where it spawns. I think that the cool part of Prideful as an affix is like the strategy behind where you're actually spawning them, where you're fighting them, where you're taking the damage buff into.
I do think there's a good chance that it's just gonna Shadowmelt's just going to be good against this affix, like it has been against 3 of the 4 seasonal affixes.
It's not worth the time to kill it. Like that's the unfortunate reality is that even though you are getting a 30% damage buff, 5% mana per second, and 60% movement speed, it's still not worth the time that it takes to kill the Prideful mob.
But if they ever made it worth the time, it would literally be like by definition, it would have to be an affix that actually sped up the dungeon to be applied to it, which is like a little weird.
But consider if you could fight the 100% count Prideful ad right before the final boss, get the buff, and then enter the boss combat and fight another that you skipped earlier with the damage buff and the mana buff, so your healer is just like infinitely powerful.
Well, that would
and
be cool.
Get the second buff halfway through the boss, so you have like permanent 30% damage uptime.
I think anything that involves skipping the seasonal fix is bad, though.
I do think a problem with Reaping was the whole getting 100% after the boss thing, so I'm surprised to see that's still a thing with Prideful. I think that, I don't know, just like, don't spawn one at 100, spawn one at 20, 40, 60, 80, and then we don't have this like weird arbitrary pathing thing where you're never supposed to get count until the last boss is dead.
I don't hate this 100 one because you're able to take the 100% into the boss.
Yeah, like, I mean, I guess you can.
Reaping, with Reaping it was a little bit different. Yeah. With Reaping it was a little bit different. Like if you're able to skip phases or something like that, there is tangible benefit at getting 100. I don't think it's reasonable because I don't think you're actually going to. I think that you're going to lose a lot more time than you end up gaining by the damage buff.
Yeah, I mean, for the same reasons that it's worth it to meld it, right? Like, exactly. Just all the other ones you could take into bosses as well if you wanted to.
Sure.
All right. Somebody says they changed Belf racial. Why not meld? Yeah, I think that it's reasonable to be like.
I'm surprised they haven't nerfed meld yet. Based on the last expansion.
$30.
Okay, that's true. Oh man.
That's true. They were making quite a bit of money per week off of those teams that were swapping at the. Do you remember in season 3 those teams that were swapping twice per week to raid on Horde and Key as Alliance?
Yeah, they were taking stream donations to swap.
Yeah,
I would be down to do that. Like I would not care.
That is just too privileged in my mind.
I hate you.
All right. Amberger asks at Tettles, why are melee classes mostly useless except for kicks, while they're arguably harder to play in higher end content? Because in raid they're absolute trash. I wouldn't say they're useless in higher end content. Like I think that Mythic Plus has been melee dominated this expansion, not just for kicks, but also just like there's. I don't know. Melee have a lot of crowd control bonuses over ranged, but yeah, in raid has been range dominated.
Yeah, to a fault. I would say that raid is overly range dominated.
It's just hard.
Okay,
it's hard to design raid mechanics. Melee. Yeah,
I've talked to people about it, and it's that you can't design a raid mechanic that is melee friendly. Like at minimum, the abilities and the mechanics do not affect the melee at all. At worst case scenario, they limit the melee's uptime on the boss. There is no mechanic that is deemed melee friendly.
Yeah, exactly. Like the way you make a melee friendly fight is you make mechanics that suck for ranged and don't target melee.
That's not, and that's not even melee friendly. That's just melee neutral.
Well, no, those can be melee friendly. Like Mithrax, for instance, when the balls could target melee on the start, that was melee unfriendly. You could only bring a few melee.
Like a Cooldown issue though.
Then once they made melee, they made that ability not target melee. Then all of a sudden it became a melee friendly fight because melee had a really easy job, and the fewer melee you brought, or the more melee you brought, the more space there was per range player that was out in the rest of the thing. So yeah, Cooldown was like that as well. Where like mechanics that just don't target melee make it into a melee friendly fight, assuming that makes it easier to deal with because there's fewer people that are legal targets. I don't know. It is a really tough challenge to solve. I think mechanics like the one in the end of Mogashan Vaults, where there's the Will of the Emperor has this mechanic where it does like a melee combo, and so if you're a melee player, you have to like dodge this combo of abilities, and then if you do that, you get to do a bunch of damage to the boss at the end if you do successfully. Those sorts of creative melee mechanics. They
really got to think outside of the box for melee.
Yeah, it's really hard. There's not an easy way to just design like anytime you design a mechanic that's like, okay, these players are supposed to stack or these players are supposed to spread, like both of those suck for melee. But both of those are fine for ranged and suck for melee. The core building blocks of raid mechanics are inherently melee unfriendly and range friendly. THD grinning and typing away.
Well, you like this look.
Very, very cool.
Little ears.
I think that I just think that they need to think outside of the box in terms of what they're going to do for melee specific stuff, like because as it currently stands, melee are not okay. And in Mythic Plus though, melee have a lot of the AoE like crowd control utility that you really want, like AoE stuns. They also have like melee interrupts. They have a lot of single target stops as well. So they do have a lot of the utility that you're actually looking for in Mythic Plus dungeons currently. But like, I don't know, man. How do you even fix that for balancing for raid, where melee are just your Mythic Plus specs and then, or Mythic Plus classes, and then the raid is like ranged only.
Yeah, it's really hard.
Yeah, I mean, they made Demonology. I think Demonology was an attempt in P2 to try to, where they have like the 2 ads on top of the boss in P2, and then the 2 that are just off on the sides to sort of like have a more well-balanced comp. Or you just run multi-daughters and hit all 4 at the same time.
Yeah, multi-daughters are that's the biggest.
Like
multi-daughters are just good at everything in raid as well. Like every basic setup of ads you can come up with is either fine or good for multi-daughters, but that's not true for any other damage profile.
Yeah.
Melee are also like really fucking slow as a default, and like have limited uptime if you ever have to move a boss. There's so much wrong with melee, I feel like, just as a fundamental design.
All right. I think that about does it for our show this week. Thanks so much for joining us, THD. For anybody who wants to find THD, he is on Twitter at THDlock. Limit THDlock.
Limit THDlock, yeah.
Very epic. And twitch.tv/THDlock. Yeah. It's a crazy Twitter. You can find 2 different types of daily tweet there. It's the content is just, it's off the charts.
Good causes though. I like the content.
And he is, of course, Warlock main with complexity limit. So catch him gaming in a serious manner in that way all the time. That's going to be the end of our show, though. We'll be back next week talking more about Prideful and the other Mythic Plus stuff. Later, everybody.
Peace.